The Void, Series 1, Episode 1, The Naled, Chapter 2. The elevator door opened with a gentle sliding sound. Patiently waiting for the occupants to disembark onto the concourse, Schafer then stepped in, tapping the display to indicate his route to the top floor. The window afforded him a spectacular view of the exterior of the building and the park that surrounded it. All manner of flora dominated the immediate area, giving it a vibrant color that juxtaposed the enormous building that it encircled. Despite the idyllic setting of the park, the pathways were beset by a legion of people, bustling with humanity as they made their ways through their everyday lives. He could spot a film making its way through the crowd, its extremely tall, slender frame distinctive from the human form, spinning its way along the pathway in that particular rotational form of locomotion they utilized. There were no children in the park, something he felt every park should have, for it was a workplace environment. A congenial one for sure, but a workplace environment nonetheless. This was a governmental building after all, and the only people who should be in the park are the ones who had business here. The elevator sprang into life, starting slowly before accelerating faster and faster up the side of the building. The park quickly disappeared below him, and he turned his gaze towards the horizon. The city was a breathtaking sight when seen from altitude. It was a crucible of change, forever reshaping itself as it evolved. The old Gothic buildings of the Empire were slowly being torn down in favor of more bright and aesthetic designs. Skyscrapers huddled around each other in clumps, like corpses, standing out against the grass of the more modest buildings that surrounded them. In the distance, he could see the citadel of Triskele, towering over the skyline, its neo-Gothic architecture looming over the city as a permanent reminder of the tyrant that once occupied it. Schafer believed that the monument to the old oppressive regime should have been torn down and replaced with something more befitting the society they had crafted in the years since, but the powers that be decided it should stand as a reminder of the past. They'd even repaired the damages sustained during the Civil War. Now it was a tourist destination, but he remembered being stood outside it after Villa Triskele had been executed, amongst a throng of the Revolutionary Army, feeling a great relief that the war had ended. He remembered walking amongst his compatriots, exchanging news and rumors as the anger and fear slowly dissipated in the aftermath. The euphoria of victory he'd expected as a young man never really happened. It just petered out as they set about restoring order. They were glad they had won, but the suffering of so many meant that any feelings of celebration never came to pass. The memories of that time were bitter for Schafer, and that building always reminded him of it. He hated it with every fiber of his being. Now, children were escorted around it as part of their historical education. That thought made him feel old. Had it been so long since those days? He had been a young man then, a soldier in the army that overthrew Villa Triskele. Now, he was a seasoned veteran and a captain in the Republic military. By modern standards, he hadn't yet reached middle age, but he felt those years in his body. He was still fit, but everything was just that little bit harder these days. As the elevator reached new heights, he could see a more panoramic view of the city of New Athens, sprawling out as far as he could see. Once, the city had encompassed the entire planet, an ecumenopolis, and New Athens was a district of that city. The Republic had adopted a policy of devolving the city-planet into something much more open, with greater free space. It was proceeding at a slow pace, but it was gradually changing, and for the better. In the time of the Triskele Corporation, parks were practically non-existent. They were seen as a waste of space that could be put to more profitable use. Now, they were seen as a fundamental for mental health. Schafer had never really been a fan of nature, having grown up in a dense urban environment, but he had to admit, it was soothing to have quiet places outside. He appreciated it so much that he discovered a newfound love for the quiet places of the cosmos, and sought them out. The elevator approached the upper floors, starting to slow down as it approached its destination. Schafer turned his eyes to the skies. Now he had a better view of them. It was cloudy, but the sun shined out between the clouds. He remembered a time he could barely see the sun for all the smog at street level. Bright, clear days of Triskele were still a novelty for him. The pollution was still a problem, on occasion, but the Republic had made strides in cleaning it up since the war. The elevator completed its ascent, arriving at the penultimate floor, where the senior senators had their offices. The door slid open and he stepped out into a lavish hallway, populated by senior officials and their aides. A small water feature dominated the center of the hallways, surrounded by a carefully tended garden, giving the senators a place for communal meetings and a place for reflection. Above him lay the main Senate, along with the president's chambers, but they were not his destination today, for he had a meeting with an old friend. He made his way down the main corridor until he reached an unassuming office and touched the pad outside to open the door. Inside was the Anterior's office, where the senator's aide was located.
"Oh, Captain Schafer, go right in, he's expecting you,"
the aide indicated. "Thank you, Odessa." Schafer continued into the main office, the door sliding open in anticipation. Inside was an office with a large oaken desk decorated with a number of souvenirs from a lifetime of service. Behind the desk was his old friend, Danik Larsson, a tall, thin man with a shock of grey hair that flowed down the back of his head and over his shoulders. Even though he was older now, he still carried the same grace he did when he was younger. Danik was reading a media pad when he walked in, the disturbance causing him to look up and recognize his old friend. His serious face soon melted into a warm smile.
"Carl, good to see you,"
Danik cheered.
"Always good to see you, Danik,"
Schafer replied.
"How are you?"
"Forever mired by endless bullshit," Danik joked, shaking Schafer's hand, "but doing well, regardless."
"How's Yelna?"
"Oh, she's fine. Still teaching," Danik explained. "How have you been?"
"Little bit older, little bit wiser."
That'll be the day," Danik teased. "Please, have a seat. Don't want you looming over the desk." Schafer complied, pulling up a comfortable wooden armchair. "Drink?" Danik offered, pulling out a bottle of whiskey from his desk drawer, as well as 2 glasses.
"I shouldn't really."
"Nonsense, you're not technically on duty until the next metric day."
"Okay then, just the one."
Danik smiled as he poured 2 generous measures and handed one to Schafer.
"You know you shouldn't be either."
"Oh, alcohol is an essential tool of democracy. What doesn't get debated in the Senate chambers gets discussed in the bar after all," Danik mused. "I've had more success convincing people over a few drinks than I have on the Senate floor." "A little liquid lubrication to grease the wheels of democracy, then." "Exactly. The ancient Persians used to make decisions when drunk, and then reviewed them when sober, or vice versa. And if they reached the same conclusion, they knew it was the right course to take."
"I must have missed that little nugget of history,"
Schafer smiled. "There's plenty of wisdom to be found in history.
A lot of suffering, too."
"Still wisdom to be had from that. Mostly how not to repeat it," Danik observed. "Which, in a roundabout way, brings us to the subject of the day. You've had a chance to review the command assignments. Do you have any reservations with them?"
"It's in my report, Danik."
"Ah, your report. The famous Schafer narrative," Danik dismissed. "I wanted to get your unofficial opinion."
"I have a couple, and one major one."
"What's the major one?"
"Nikolai Sokolov. That one has a bit of history."
"That he does, but he is one of the most capable pilots and flight commanders the Republic has produced."
"He's also known for arrogance and causing conflict," Schafer countered. "I don't tolerate that kind of behavior from my staff. It's unprofessional for one, and dangerous in a pressure situation for another."
"I'm not saying that he won't be a handful. He certainly caused enough incidents in his time, but he does have an outstanding combat record. He also does inspire morale in those flights he has led."
"His record does have its good points. I'm not going to dispute that. I just don't think he's right for the position."
"Well, just give him the opportunity. If it doesn't work out, I'll respect your decision," Danik proposed.
Schafer didn't like this. It was political speak for do as you're told. The order he could live with. The disingenuous nature of the sentence is what he didn't like.
"What about the minor ones?"
"The commander is a bit of an unknown quantity for me."
"Voight. She's got glowing references from everyone she has served with."
"I know. It's just that she seems awfully young to be a commander," Schafer admitted. "I'm not sure she has the requisite experience for that level of authority."
"I'll admit she is young for the rank," Danik conceded. but everyone absolutely adores her, both as a person and as a leader. The only thing I've heard that could be considered even remotely negative is that she is as stubborn as a mule. Have you met her? Only once, and that was brief, to say the least. What did you make of her? She seemed perfectly charming. I couldn't vouch for anything more than that, though. It was just a meet and greet. I accept the judgment of those who've served with her. It's just a minor concern I have with her experience. Well, I'm sure she could benefit from yours. Varma, I'm quite impressed with. Works well with others, highly respected and tough as nails, Schafer admired. He doesn't look it, but Haldane says he's like a force of nature when he gets going. What about the others? Takuma I've no problems with. Nadiro is also a bit young, but it's a bit more acceptable at that level. Richter's also fine, bit of an oddball from what I hear, but excellent at his job. Ilyas is also good. You've no issues with Ilyas? I don't have the same issues with their kind that others have. Someone on the crew that can read minds. Best damn advantage you could ever have in my book. Schafer did mind psychics. Sure, an unscrupulous psychic could easily invade your mind, but the vast majority didn't. The same was true of those people who were naturally gifted to be stronger than others. The strong person could bully or intimidate a weaker one, but most didn't. There was a level of trust you had to apply to other people to make society work. They'd been around as a subset of humanity for a few generations now, but the majority were still not very trusting of them. Where they had come from was a complete mystery. Even the mechanics of their abilities were unexplained, though some of the conspiracy theories touted the tinkering of the human species by the Yanshi. Not that it could ever be proved. She is technically a tactical officer, Danik pointed out. And a good one according to the files, Schafer agreed. But if the situation calls for it, you can be sure I'll make use of those talents of hers. Any other issues? Generally, going by the files and what I've heard, it's a good set of officers. It's only really Sokolov I have a problem with, Schafer summated. I can deal with it, but if he acts up, I will act accordingly. I'm sure you'll have him performing to the best of his abilities, Danik assured. What about the ship? It's beautiful, that's for sure, Schafer gushed. The engineers and mechanics have outdone themselves. Have you been on it yet? Not physically. I've been around the simulation plenty of times, but not in reality. The Liberator is the culmination of all our technical progress since the war. State-of-the-art in every way. The best weapons, the best armor, the best scientific equipment, the best medical facilities. No need for the sales pitch, Danik. I'm already sold, Schafer interrupted. It's a great honor to be given the command of such a vessel. You deserve it, Carl, Danik complimented. You're the best captain we've got, so it was an obvious choice. Hell, you'd be even higher in rank if you ever went for a promotion. Promotion means more politics, Danik, Schafer replied. I'm happy where I am. You never did take much to politics, did you? Too much compromise for me, Schafer responded honestly. I prefer the level of autonomy I have. And yet you fought so hard for it. Oh, I believe in it. You know that. I'm just not suited for it, Schafer smiled. Danik laughed. Whereas it fits me like a glove. Not that I ever intended to be in such a position. It just kind of happened. The people wanted war heroes in the Senate. Still do. I never liked that moniker. Danik shuddered in disgust. I was never a hero. I just survived longer than the others. That's not how I remember it. We remember things very differently, Danik chiddied. All I ever did was make pretty speeches and shit myself. Now Schafer laughed. The modesty plays well to the public, but it's not really modesty, Danik continued. We both know war doesn't make heroes. Not really. It was a grim time, Schafer commented seriously, but we did what was necessary. I might regret what I was forced to do, but I don't regret the reason for it. You remember what it was like under Triskele. It had to change, Danik sighed. Still, look at what we've built since. There was a genuine pride in Danik's voice. He might rue his participation in the war, but it was obvious he was satisfied with his achievements since. It's not perfect, true, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was before. You're preaching to the converted here, Schafer concurred. We've come a long way, and you know what I'll do to defend it.
I would never impugn your dedication, Carl, Danik conceded. Now about your first mission. I know it's a deviation from the usual training exercises you'd put your crew through, but it recently got added to the to-do list, and it looks fairly innocuous. These things are never as simple as they first appear, Schafer added. Admiral Lenton briefed me on it. Investigate an abandoned colony on Sierra Leone. Looks pretty straightforward until you consider it was expunged from all the Triskele-era records. Yeah, well, that is a cause for concern, which is why we want you to go instead of one of the dedicated scientific vessels, Danik added. But we don't expect any issues. There's nothing in what we uncover that indicates any danger at all. But in the absence of fact, caution is advised. Indeed. We know next to nothing of this colony, save for the fact it was some kind of mining or refining colony. Beyond that, nothing. No reason was given for the Triskele Corporation abandoning the planet. It may just be down to a lack of resources. It happens. We find planets all the time that look promising, but then turn out to be lacking in what we thought it possessed. The secrecy is the issue, Schafer reminded. They wouldn't have done their best to remove it from the records if there wasn't something shady going on. Yes, it could be anything, Danik stated. We just anticipate to be an investigation into why it was abandoned, and it could well turn out to be rather understated. Still, if little happens, it's good training for the crew, and if something unexpected happens, well, you have the resources to deal with it. I don't trust unknowns, Schafer advised. It's dangerous out there, and what you don't know will kill you. We'll investigate, but I will treat it as an excursion in potentially hazardous territory. I wouldn't expect anything less, Danik agreed. Like I say, there's nothing to indicate any danger, but, well, that's why we want to give the Liberator a go. Lenton didn't go much into detail over how this information was acquired, Schafer asked, just that it was found in the archives. It's not common knowledge, but we have an organization tasked with going through the old Triskele archives, searching for anything of this nature. Their remit is to find anything that might have been buried for some reason. The fear was that Triskele might have left something behind like a vengeance weapon of some kind. We haven't found anything like that so far, but we have found plenty of secret caches or hidden assets, Danik explained. As the data miners have learned new techniques and the AI has improved, we found more and more. And this is classified. Not classified as such, but we don't really advertise it either. No need instilling any fear into the population needlessly, Danik reasoned. And given what we found so far, there's no real need to change that stance. Is there anything else I need to know? The information Admiral Lenton gave you is everything we know about the planet. It's completely unremarkable for what we know. Nothing to even mark it as particularly rich in minerals. That's another thing that makes me worry. Why an industrial base in an unremarkable world? You're right to be wary. Still, Villa Triskele wasn't well known for a reason. Prepare for the worst and you'll never be taken by surprise. Good to know you remember the old maxims, Danik smiled. You would keep reminding us, hard to forget. Even now. Hopefully this will prove to be just another hidden cache, but I'm fully confident that you'll be able to cope with whatever happens. If nothing else, it will be good experience for the crew. You've still got 3 Triskele days before the next metric one. Why don't you come by the house tomorrow evening? We'll have a drink and a chat. Yona will want to make you waffles. She got a new recipe for the chocolate sauce from one of the film delegates. I've got no idea what's in it, but it's marvelous. I thought you did all the cooking. I do normally. That's why she won't tell me what's in the chocolate sauce. She wants to be better than me for at least one thing in the kitchen, Danik added. I've been trying to find which film delegate gave her the recipe, but I haven't found out which one it was yet. Okay then. You're on. Excellent. I'll break out the vintage Kidra. Schafer was surprised. Kidra was a liqueur distilled at the edge of Republic territory. Very popular, but because of the distance involved, quite expensive and hard to come by on Triskele. I'll definitely be there then, he smiled.